Yo guys, what's up? Bursinator here, and we have another great video for you today. This one's within that series where we're talking about the differences between strength gain and muscle gain, like how they differ. How there's the neural side, the nervous system side, and there's the muscular growth side, the fatigue and the tension and all that stuff. So, to get started, this video I want to talk about how you could be overtraining your nervous system and preventing growth. And so the big thing that's happening is that your nervous system isn't able to adapt to the work that you're doing, and because of that, you're not able to increase the tension to get the growth. Even though your muscular side's recovered, your muscles are able to keep going, the nervous system side is holding you back. So we're going to dive into that and talk about all the things that are involved in this. Just as a recap though, the neural side of things, or anytime you gain strength, there's the three factors: the rate coding, coordination, and growth. If you haven't seen my other video on this, I'll link to it below. You can click and watch that real quick. So only one of those ways of increasing strength is through actual muscle growth. The other two are purely neurological, just from increasing the amount of electricity and how frequently it's firing, and then also improving the coordination between muscles and the muscle fibers and everything like that. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the first thing I want to talk about is the difference in recovery time for your muscles and for your nervous system. So typically, if you hit a hard weight training session, your nervous system takes at least 48 hours to recover. So, obviously this depends on how much you do and how hard you hit it and everything like that. But in general, around 48 hours. Now the thing is, you use your nervous system in every exercise that you do, your central nervous system. Whether it's a leg day, or whether it's chest day or back day or anything like that, no matter what you're doing, you're using your nervous system. So that's why I typically don't like the 5-day, 6-day splits where you're hitting one muscle group per day and you're pretty much hitting it hard every day, because your nervous system is being used on every single day. Now obviously if you're doing an arm day, it's not quite as taxing as a leg day or something like that. But in my opinion, it's much better to just hit it hard and then let the nervous system recover for the next 48 hours and then hit it again hard. So the nervous system takes about that long, but on the other side, your muscles take a lot longer to recover, but they also aren't as limited. So let me explain that real quick. When your nervous system is unrecovered, you won't be able to push heavier weights. The electrical signal literally is being held back, and you won't be able to create that force within your muscles. But on the other hand, when your muscles aren't recovered, they can still contract and push heavy weights. Just because they aren't recovered doesn't mean that they can't create that force. There was actually a really interesting study where they would take a group of participants and put them through a hard weight training session, and they'd have them the next day or some time afterwards try to lift a certain amount of weight. I think it was a leg extension, and see how much they could actually do. And obviously they were fatigued from the last day, nervous system was tired, so they weren't able to push quite as hard. So what they did next is they hooked electrodes up to their legs and artificially created that central nervous system electricity. And when they did that, even though their muscles were still fatigued, even though their central nervous systems were still fatigued, they were able to get the muscles to contract harder than they even did in the initial session. So the point in all that is your muscles, despite being unrecovered, if you were capable of giving them that electricity, they would still contract, and they would still contract strong. But they're controlled by your nervous system, and your nervous system gets fatigued, and that's why you're not able to push harder. Muscles take somewhere around like 7+ days to fully heal, but you don't need to wait that long in order to hit them again. It's kind of an ongoing thing where one workout you'll still be recovered from it when you hit it again, and that one's still recovering, and then it just kind of keeps rolling that way. So like we've talked about before, tension is one of the primary drivers of muscle growth. You also have fatigue and micro damage, but those are to a much lesser extent than the actual tension, which is, the weight on the bar. So when you work out, you obviously want to be getting stronger so you can increase that tension. But if your nervous system is fatigued and you're not giving it enough time to recover, then you're not able to push your muscles to the extent where they are able to get further stimulus to grow. Now, if you hooked up electrodes like they did in the study, theoretically, you could still get your muscles to contract and you could still stimulate more muscle growth. But obviously that's not really practical in the real world or even possible for certain muscle groups. So what you do instead is you have to make sure your nervous system recovers so you can keep getting stronger, so then you can keep putting the tension on the muscles so that you can keep growing. So what are the main things that fatigue your nervous system and make it harder for your nervous system to recover? Comes down to three main things. The first one is training to failure. The more often you train to failure, the more stressful it is to your nervous system. There is benefit for your muscles as far as muscle growth from training to failure, and it can be a really powerful stimulus for your nervous system to adapt, but it's also really draining. So you kind of have to look at the whole scale of things and see how fast you're recovering, how much you're working yourself, and decide whether you need more failure or less failure. A lot of people train to failure on almost every set, and that can be a bad thing. It can push it too far where you have to wait longer than 48 hours to recover, and then you're starting to slow down the process because you're not able to hit the same muscle group as frequently. So the second thing is the frequency. So obviously if you are training every day in that split routine, your nervous system's not going to get a chance to recover, and every time you go into any muscle group, you're going to be held back because you're not in a recovered state. Like I said, your muscles, they can be a little bit fatigued, they can be not quite all the way recovered, and they'll be fine. They can still adapt, they can still work, but your nervous system has to be able to function, has to be able to push as hard as it can in order to get the weight moving, to get your muscles actually contracting against that weight. So the third and final thing that really stresses the nervous system a lot is the total volume that you're doing. This is kind of related to frequency because the more volume you do per session, the longer it's going to take to recover from, so that means you're going to have to use a lower frequency. But what you really want to do is find the sweet spot where you're stimulating the adaptation without doing too much that causes you to have to wait a long time to work out. When you find that sweet spot of triggering gains while maximizing the recovery and minimizing the amount of stress, that's where you're able to create the fastest growth, because you can train more frequently, but you're still getting those stimulations. If you train with less volume, you're not actually going to trigger what you want. If you train with too much, then you're just extending the time of recovery. So powerlifters, when they're trying to make sure they get stronger for the meet, or they're trying to maximize their actual potential to lift weight for the competition, they'll go through a phase where they peak. They're trying to make sure that their nervous system is completely recovered and ready to fire as hard as it can on the competition date. So they'll start to reduce the amount of work and reduce the intensity of the work a couple weeks prior, and even extend the frequency out so that they're working out less, allowing more recovery from the nervous system, so that on that one day they will have maximum nervous system capabilities based on all the training they have already done up until that point. So that's kind of a way that this all works together, where your nervous system, in order to push the heaviest weights, needs to be in that recovered state. So the final thing I want to touch on is true hard gainers, people who really do have a hard time gaining muscle. This isn't for people who are just training wrong or are not eating right or anything. This is for people who legitimately do have a hard time gaining muscle. It's a genetic thing. Usually these people have nervous systems that are more easily fatigued, and they recover slower. So if they're training to failure all the time, or training with a normal amount of volume and frequency, that might be too much for their nervous system. And even though their muscles could recover and could improve from that, they're being held back because their nervous system can't adapt in time. So for these people, I usually say stay further away from failure. Make sure that you're using a little bit lower frequency. Don't be hitting your nervous system every single day. It takes too long for your nervous system to recover that way. You need to give it a little bit of extra time. And because you're using less failure, and because you're using less frequency, you can go a little higher on your volume to make sure that you're hitting that sweet spot where you're stimulating gains. But again, you want to stay away from failure during that, for anyone who is an actual hard gainer. All right, guys, that's about it for this video. I'm sure you got something out of it as far as like comparing what the nervous system does comparing to what the muscle system does. Understanding how this all works together and how it fits within your training, because this is a really important topic when you're trying to figure out exactly how your body responds to weight training. The more you know about the whole entire system and how it works, then the more you can start to put the pieces together of like, oh, so like that's why this happened when I did this, and that's why this happened when I did this, and all that good stuff. I hope you enjoy these hideous curtains of mine. They make a great backdrop. I just love it. So, all right, I'm gonna get out of here, and I will see you guys later. Peace.